Hi, Margaret. Welcome to Furniture Success Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Annette. I was very excited when you reached out.
Perfect. So, could you tell us about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Margaret Schwartz. My business is Modern Antiquarian, and I am an antiques dealer. I really focus on sort of antiques for modern life. Right now, I have a lot of garden antiques that sort of evolved to become my niche. I absolutely love garden antiques, but I still offer other things as well, furniture, lighting, mirrors, art, all of that. So it's
Mhm,
it's a fun industry. I absolutely love being a dealer. I'm based in New York City, and I started my business. I fell in love with antiques almost 11 years ago, but I didn't
mhm.
launch Modern Antiquarian until January of 2018. So it's quite evolved over the number of years since I first fell in love with antiques.
So, what inspired you to start Modern Antiquarian, and how did your journey into the antiques business begin?
It's a bit of a funny story. It kind of happened by accident. I went on a trip to London, and I decided to book a 1 day antiques tour because I thought that would just be something interesting and kind of different to do. I had a shop at the time in New Canaan, Connecticut, and I thought it would be interesting to bring in antiques. So I went over and I said, well, just a warning. I don't think I'm going to buy anything. This is more just because I love them, and I think it'll be fun to do this. And they were totally fine with that. But it was a 1 day tour. And by the end of the day, I had filled the 20-foot container. I had no idea I was going to get anything at all. And it was one of those moments in your life where you're just like, aha, this is it. So totally fell in love with antiques then. And I started bringing them into the store. So that was back in, it was almost 11 years ago. So yeah, I guess 2014. Um, I I started bringing them in and really started falling in love with them more and more and focusing, like taking more of my energy and, my finances and all that and really investing in the antique side of the business. Over a number of years, I realized, okay, I really want to do antiques full time. That's it. I didn't want to have just the straight brick and mortar kind of retail anymore. And so I ended up closing that shop in December of 2017 and launched Modern Antiquarian in January of 2018.
Wow.
It just, yeah, I mean, it was kind of crazy because it wasn't the most straightforward way to do things at all, but it works for me. I'm like a bit of a believer in a spaghetti method. You keep trying things and whatever works. You refine and refine. And I feel like that was almost kind of how I got into antiques. Was I was just like, I really like it. I should give this a shot.
Yeah, but you have a little bit different background. Could you tell us about your retail background? Uh,
Sure. So my background, I graduated from college and I was super lucky and I got a job at Martha Stewart, which was incredible and sort of, I think, one of the important things in my career is I've always had really, really wonderful mentors, just people who have been incredibly generous with their time and effort, and just supporting me and guiding me. So I did have a few mentors at Martha Stewart in my 4 years there. It was a remarkable experience. I loved it. Loved the people that I worked with and, all the different challenges that I faced. But, I really started to fall in love with interiors when I worked there. I had always had a passion for it, but I really started to fall in love in a more meaningful way, and decided that that's what I wanted to do, was work more on the retail side of things. And so I like I still laugh about it because my one of my jobs there, I spent a lot of time delivering like not great news, and making big asks. And so I realized that one, I have a very thick skin, and two, that I can kind of handle whatever personality you throw at me, right? There's so many different kinds of personalities out there. And so I thought, all right, if I can handle whatever's going on my day to day at Martha, then I can probably handle just straight retail.
I see. Yeah. And modern antiquarian is known for unique antiques, right? And how do you find and select the pieces that you sell? Could you tell a little bit about the process behind it?
Sure. So again, it kind of goes back to mentors. I have a couple people that I work with over in England who really help me focus on finding the antiques that I'm looking for and sourcing, and I go over on these buying tours. So that's all done through the Antiques Diva. They've been incredible.
Hmm.
Um, and over the years, I've refined my look and kind of narrowed down my niche, which is super important to know what your niche is. But
Hmm.
being there and really, building relationships with people, I think is just so important. And I mean, of course that's important, but I don't think I realized how meaningful it was just to show appreciation for, to the other dealers that I buy from, because we're all small businesses.
Hmm.
We're all doing our best, and to recognize the hard work that they put in, them sourcing pieces and restoring things if they need to be restored, just all of that, just showing appreciation for it and engaging with them and asking questions and all that. I think they appreciate that, right? When you acknowledge everything that they do. And so that's really important. I didn't fully understand that was actually an important way of building relationships. I just thought, you should
Hmm.
be appreciative of people and their work. But it turns out that not everyone is. And so because of that, these relationships grow stronger and deeper, and they're more willing to share things with you, right? They're more willing to share their knowledge with you. They
Hmm.
introduce you to other dealers. You kind of start to get like first dibs on things, right? As new inventory arrives, they kind of send it to you first. So I think it's just so, so, so important. It is all about relationships.
Hmm. And you travel a lot, right?
I do. I actually leave on Sunday. I have to go on another buying trip, so I
Hmm.
travel quite a fair amount. But it's the way that I have found works best for me. There's so many different ways to run a business and to source your inventory. And a lot of people buy in the U.S. A lot of people go to estate sales and auctions and things like that. But that's for me, that's not what works best. I have found to get the volume of inventory need at the quality level, to meet my
Hmm.
expectations, that I do need to go overseas to source those items.
Hmm. It was like my next question, like, what makes you different than other antique, dealers in the market today?
Right. So niche, right? Talking about the
Yeah.
niche, and it
Hmm.
is very much, it's important to figure that out. So, I mean, there are generalist dealers who kind of manage everything, but for me, I think it's super, super important, because once you know your niche, then you can kind of come up with your client avatar and like how to reach them and all of that. But my niche, I've started falling in love with the materials and focusing on garden. So learning
Hmm.
about, cast irons, all different cast, mixed stones, right? The difference between marble de latte or cast stone, the difference between terracotta and buff terracotta, just all these fun little things, and kind
Hmm.
of honing and building my knowledge around that. I think that's been important for me to kind of distinguish myself. So I really am an English and French garden dealer. That's really what I focus on. No,
Hmm.
there are tons of other people who sell, a little bit of garden here and there. And there are definitely other garden dealers, but I do feel that what I offer is a little bit different, a different kind of look and feel. You can come to me for sort of bread and butter items, right? Like the smaller kind of garden ornaments, or
Hmm.
you can come to me for things like fountains. So I think
Hmm.
that's kind of, yeah, I think that helps sort of, create my niche.
Yeah, like niching down is like one of the best way of um,
Yeah.
beating the competition in the market. But like, what did you do after that? Like, okay, you have a niche, and then how do you market yourself right now?
So marketing, I will say, is not always my strength, and I think it's super important to understand what your strengths and weaknesses are.
Hmm.
I love the sourcing of it. I love all the nitty gritty detail. Like I love kind of detail things. How are the things coming over, restoration, all of that. But marketing, I can be a little too linear in my thinking, I would say, right?
Hmm.
You know, and marketing is such a creative profession. That's something that I really appreciate, that other people have that skill, right? Because I don't. So I think it's important to find your voice, right? Find your client avatar, once you have
Hmm.
your niche, sort of being able to explain that, as clearly as possible and effectively. The visuals are super important. So I have an amazing photographer that I work with, and she photographs my product, but she also does vignettes, which I think is super important. And I have
Hmm.
somebody who does merchandising for me, Kelly McGuire. She's amazing at merchandising. So she comes in, she styles the photographs. She also does any of my installations, like the one that we have at Bergdorf's right now. She helped style all of that. So just really understanding the strengths and weaknesses, and then kind of providing those materials to the people who know how to leverage them the best.
I
So
see.
I work with a company, Summercell, who handles my socials and my email and all of that. Because it's just for me, like the best use of my time is sourcing, posting my inventory, working with the clients directly, and just kind of managing all those relationships as opposed to focusing on marketing. But marketing's so important. I mean, it's so, so, so important.
Hmm.
So it's, finding the right people to kind of help you out with that, I think is key.
Hmm. And do you attend industry events as well, like, or like trade shows, like?
I do a little. I don't
Hmm.
always go to High Point,
Hmm.
but so I've been there a few times. I actually do a big show down in Texas. At the venue is called Blue Hills, but it's the Round Top Antique
Hmm.
Show. So so you've heard of it. So there's
Yeah,
dozens of different venues and thousands of dealers and all of that. So I go to that. But I will say High Point is it's a great thing because most of my people, like most of my buyers are to the trade, right? It's mostly designers who are purchasing from me. So
hmm,
going down there and, reconnecting with people, building those relationships, I just think there's nothing that really replaces those kind of one-on-one interactions in person with people.
okay, yeah, I get it. So like, yeah, and like when it comes to building a relationship with your, customers or client personas, like how do you manage it? Like what are the things that you are careful about?
So there's a lot, you want to make sure that you're clear about what the item is, and
Hmm.
if there's been any repairs, right? The condition of the item is super, super important. But I also do things like I want people to be able to feel confident when they're purchasing from me and know, just that they feel comfortable. So one of the things that I do is when somebody buys something, I take returns. I'm not going to give you a hard time about it. I take returns. That's nobody's happy if the client's unhappy, right?
Hmm.
It's important to me. And then the other thing is I do ask that clients, if they purchase something and, down the line, somewhere down the line, they don't have use for it anymore, or just, don't need it anymore, don't want it anymore, that they reach out
Hmm.
to me first. I would like the opportunity to buy it back first. So I think that also, one, I love my inventory and I would be happy to be able to sell it a second time, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
also I think it gives people more confidence knowing that, that I love my inventory. I stand by it, right? I stand by it enough that I would take it back and sell it again. So I think that's nice for them to feel, nice for them to be aware of that.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I do think there's a lot of education about things. So I never ever want people to be anxious or, not ask me questions. Ask me whatever question you want. And I will do my absolute best to answer it. So, but it's when somebody has a question, I do like try and kind of start the conversation with, well, what piqued your interest about
Hmm.
that item? What attracted you to it? And then I'll go into and explain sort of some of the details on it, right? Like what the materials are. I do discuss the condition, sort of sharing, maybe what was going on in the world at that time and how that influenced that particular design or those materials, just those kinds of things. So I think it's sort of sharing my knowledge and just
Hmm.
building up those relationships so people do feel confident and comfortable. Now, I am lucky that I work with a lot of designers, and a lot of them know a good amount about antiques, but some don't. Some haven't worked with them before and are just, kind of anxious to get involved in it because not everybody is super trustworthy in any industry. So
Yeah,
I think people, get anxious about it, and I don't blame them. It's a lot of money to gamble on. So,
yeah.
yeah. So, and anytime somebody wants to spend money with me, like I appreciate it. I'm going to value that. They're making an investment in me, and it's really important to be grateful and to give them the best possible service that I can provide.
Yeah, I see. And do you have an email list like that you let people know about your new inventory,
We
new
do.
items?
We have
Mhm,
once a month. I don't like to inundate people with too
mhm,
many emails, so just once a month, and it's sort of, I work about a year ahead in terms of what my marketing calendars will look like, and then I drill it
mhm,
down kind of based on season and then month to month. But so each month kind of has a theme to it, and so that's what
mhm,
we work on in photography in the warehouse. We'll come in, we'll decide, okay, this month we're focusing on outdoor entertaining, and so all the vignettes that we photograph that day will be around garden entertaining. Sometimes it's more about like bringing the outdoors in, right, when we're heading towards colder months, and so we start shooting the outdoors in stuff. Like we'll start
mhm.
shooting that closer to July and August, because it takes us a little while to make sure that the photographs are done properly and then in the right places, and what the messaging around it is going to be and all of that. So I do work like a good chunk ahead. I try to,
Mhm.
yeah, stay ahead of it.
Wow, perfect. Yeah. And as a woman business owner, like what challenges you faced and how have you overcome them? Like,
They there are challenges, things that I didn't expect. Antiques is still a fairly male dominated world, and I don't think people would assume that, but it's true. I've been very fortunate for the most part dealing with people, with the people who are buying from me, right? I haven't had issues with that. It's more like my biggest issue is the shipping.
mhm,
That's Those are the people when I I just told this story recently, but several years ago now. I mean, before even COVID, I received a container, and the guy who delivered the container, the driver, he I went up to him because you have to sign paperwork to release it. You have to sign this paperwork. And so I went up to him and I said, "Oh, where's the paperwork? We're done. You can get out of here. I just need to sign the paperwork." And he said, "I gave it to the guy." And I was like, What guy?" He kept saying, "I gave it to the guy, I gave it to the guy." And then my mover, whom I adore and have worked with constantly for like, I don't even know, 8 years or something like that. He all of a sudden he walked around the corner and he's like, "I've been looking for you. You have to sign the paperwork." And he was like, "I gave it to that guy." And I was like, "I'm the guy. I'm the guy that needs to sign this. Like, I'm the guy." So it was just one of those things, and it's usually around shipping. And if they're really giving me the runaround when it comes to a delivery or a pickup or something, sometimes I'll call on the big guns and have my own mover, Emmanuel, call them. And wasn't fully on board with me. He was like, "No, that can't be. Whatever. That doesn't make sense. It's just because you're a woman." And so then I explained the conversation to him, had him call them, and it was like within a 5 minute period, a night and day experience. And he called me back and he was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're right." He was shocked by it. So that's really where the frustration comes in, not with the clients or the buyers or whom I buy from. It's really on that end of things. Which makes me laugh. I'm like, this is like the last mile. I'm like, can't we just get it together?
I see. Yeah, perfect. And I was watching British, antique shows like that I was like fun of that, and it's kind of interesting for me. But I just wanna know that how do you balance the love for the history behind antiques with the demands of running a successful business, because like sometimes you love something but people demand something else. How do you balance it?
Yes, I completely understand. Um, I I have probably a more controversial opinion on this. So often you hear just buy what sells, buy what sells. I think that when you do that, when you're not passionate about what you're selling, people know. They can see right through you. And how are you going to sell something that you don't really care about? How can you do that successfully? So I buy what I love. If I wouldn't recommend it if I wouldn't have it in my own home or recommend it to a dear friend or something like that, then I'm just not going to get it. And that maybe it's popular, maybe it's not, but it just takes one buyer, finding the right buyer, and I won't compromise and just buy what I think is going to sell. There was that mid-century modern craze for so long. I love mid-century modern. I think it's fantastic. I don't have the knowledge base around it, and
Hmm.
I don't love it in the same way that other people do, right? That's such an important part of their aesthetic. And I wasn't just going to jump on in there and start selling mid-century modern because that was so hot at the moment. That doesn't work. People would be able to tell. They'd be able to see right through me. I'm not I don't have a good poker face. So it's like,
Hmm. Hmm.
I can only focus on what I love, and that's it. I want to be able to stand behind it 100%. So I think, and again, maybe not the most popular way to approach things.
Hmm. Hmm. And like, how important is storytelling in selling at antiques? Like, do you do storytelling as well? Like,
I certainly try to. And it's, we talked about it before when somebody asks me a question, I try and find out, what piqued their interest, and then I'll be able to share information about it. But, I have a couple kind of favorite pieces that I reference a lot, and being able to share such a deep story, I think really does resonate with people. And one of them is a period Gustavian secretary that I fell in love with in Sweden. It's beyond fabulous. So it's, age appropriate. It has, the pine material. It has some original paint, some restored paint. But when I open this piece, it's so beautiful. The color is beautiful. But when I
hmm.
open the piece and you go through everything, there was a handwritten note in there.
Well,
So it was amazing. So, we had it translated because I don't speak or read Swedish. We had it translated, and it was a birthday card. It was
wow.
so wonderful. It was and so I still have that note, but it was a birthday card. So sharing things like that, or even sharing, maybe where I found something, right? Sort of like how I found it and why I loved that item. I do think it's important. I'm better like one-on-one in person, I'm not like the ideal writer. My writing can be a bit rigid, a bit
Hmm.
stiff and factual, and not as great about telling the story that way. So it's something that I'm working on.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That was a great example. And like, do you have like any memorable or unique story behind a piece of furniture or antique that has passed through your hands? Like any unique items or like memorable one?
I have one right now that I particularly love. There is this fantastic, I mean, it's huge. It's absolutely, it's certainly the biggest piece I've ever owned, and I think the most expensive. Um,
Hmm.
but it is a garden sort of arbor. So there's these kind of two demi-lune benches that are next to each other, and they have, lions, and they've got columns coming up and a little arbor on top. So it's so, the detail on it is so stunning that it's made out of marble de latte, so a marble based concrete, right? A marble based
Hmm.
mixed stone, and the detail on this piece is so incredible that it actually looks like the back of the bench is tufted. I mean, it has the covered buttons, and it's remarkable. It's so stunningly beautiful. I totally fell in love with it. That I got in England. It was, an English piece. Even though it's, marble, you think more Italian, but it's an
Hmm.
English piece, and it's such a showstopper, spectacular piece. Like, if whatever garden that ends up in, that is the focal point of your garden. It's so wonderful.
Wow. Yeah. And like, what are some of the most rewarding aspects of running, modern antiquarian for you personally? Like,
I love working with
I can see that. Sorry, I can see that it is a passion for you. Like, obviously, you are passionate about it. There's no doubt. But no, I just want to know, like, what are the rewarding, aspects of your business?
it's a lot of it is seeing, and I don't always get to see it, but seeing how the end user lives with the item, right? So, how I think there's no shortage of creativity out there, and people are really doing things in different ways. And just because it's an antique chest of drawers doesn't mean it has to be used that way, in the future. It's, however, it's antiques for modern life, right? That's my whole thing. Antiques for modern life. And so being able to see how people are taking these things that maybe it's no, like the original use is no longer needed. So how are people taking those things and incorporating them into their lives? I think it's super, super rewarding to be able to see that and to see the kind of joy that it gives them, like being part of a little memory. I do think for antiques, we're sort of, more like custodians almost, right, of these objects and, just kind of passing them on, taking care of them. They're part of our story for a little while. Now we're part of their story for a while and, passing them on to whomever needs it next or wants it next. So I love seeing people use them.
Right. Yeah. That's amazing. And like, how do you stay updated with the latest trends, like, and innovations in the antiques, industry?
I'll kind of just try to network with people and see what they're feeling and what tools they're using. I do think networking is the backbone of the interiors world, just in general, right? I think we probably all feel that. And talking to people, seeing what tools they're using, sort of what's working for them, what isn't working for them, right? Like, has one of the marketplaces maybe slowed down, or, are they seeing a change in different things and in the types of things that people are buying? Maybe a different price point is showing up. So those kinds of things. I think it's important to have honest conversations around it. So, and, you don't have to share numbers, but saying, now this particular platform has slowed down, while this one exploded. I haven't sold a chest of drawers in a month now. Like, just those kinds of things, understanding what people want. And there are, of course, as what you said, trends in antiques. It sounds kind of crazy, but you're right. There are, not that they're antiques, but mid-century modern was like reigning supreme for so long. And now we're moving away from it. And I'm starting to see a lot more Art Deco, which is really fun and really interesting. Not a ton of Art Deco garden, but I am looking for it. I do get it when I see it. I have a spectacular pair of Art Deco concrete lions that are just like to die for. They're so spectacular. But, just staying on top of those kinds of trends. And I don't adhere to them strongly because it's what you and I said earlier. If you don't love it, how are you going to sell it? So that doesn't guide my purchases.
Wow. And like, what advice do you have for those looking to start, a career in the antique business or build a similar business like yours?
I would say anybody could reach out to me if you're actually considering it. Like, I am a big believer in, what is that expression? A rising tide lifts all boats, right? Isn't that the expression? I'm a big believer in that. So if somebody's actually interested in doing it, definitely reach out to me. I'm happy to talk to you. And I have made every mistake, continue to make mistakes. I'm sure I made one on this podcast, but that's okay. You just learn and move on, and do better, constantly do better. So I would say the two biggest pieces of advice are find a mentor, somebody who can work with you and who's willing to invest in you, right? Invest time and share their knowledge. And then also don't be afraid to fail, because it's going to happen a lot. You're going to fail a lot.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
What do you mean? Like, what could be the biggest mistakes, like in the early stage of the career? Like,
it's horribly embarrassing. Like, so it was so bad. You have no idea. But I mean, I had no idea what I was doing. I told you, I went over there, didn't think I'd buy anything, filled a 20-foot container. What kind of a lunatic does that? But I did, totally unprepared. And when everything got there, I didn't price anything correctly. I didn't know how to sell the antiques, right? You were talking about the story, building the story. I didn't really know what I was buying. I just bought it because I thought it was beautiful. There was no point of view or perspective. Like, it was not cohesive. So just anything, like, just complete chaos. I had no idea. And again, I didn't make any money on it because I didn't price anything the right way. I was just doing, basically like a keystone markup in retail. And then I was like, wow, this is a great way to lose a lot of money. So, I figured that out pretty quickly, but not soon enough. So, it's it was laughable, like looking back on it, how naive I was. And sometimes I think that's a good thing when you're super naive, because you're like, well, I just don't know any better, like it's just, let's just go for it and, figure it
Mhm.
out. You just got to figure it out.
Mhm. And
So.
looking at like what is next for Modern Antiquarian, like any exciting projects or future plans that you are working on right now?
So right now, I have been so focused on so many things that are happening at the moment, that
Mhm.
I have not had. And I am normally a very forward thinker. I think it's really important to have goals and to work consistently towards them. I think that's very, very important. And right now, I have been working on this Bergdorf thing for so long for the Blue Hills, the Round Top Spring Show, and I had some plans, but then things have changed, right, with the tariffs and all of that. So
Mhm.
I've sort of I have to kind of rejigger things, right? Look at things about where I can kind of cut some costs, like trim costs, and, what price points that I'm going to start selling at. So yeah, I think things are very fluid. And I think that's one of the good things about being a small business, is that we can be so flexible, right? We can just pivot really quickly if we need to. So that's
Correct. Yeah.
kind of where I'm at the moment, is sort of figuring out, what's happening with the tariffs. Like, what am I doing here? So
I think
what are we doing?
yeah, you are not going to be affected so much, I believe, like because you are
It's
importing from Europe, right?
Yeah, so it's,
Predominantly.
yeah, exactly. But at the beginning it was 20% EU and 10% UK. And so I buy primarily
Mhm.
in the UK, but that's not what mattered. It's where the item was manufactured, not the country of export.
Oh.
Um, yes. So because at first I was like, well, 10%, I can figure out how to cut 10%, whatever, But when I realized it was the country of manufacture, I do buy French garden antiques, and that would have been 20%. Now it's back down to a blanket 10%. Who
Mhm.
knows what it'll be when it hits the water? So I'm just trying to be very mindful about that. And I mean, honestly, like, I'm doing my best. Everybody's doing their best. And
Mhm.
again, could be totally wrong about my approach to things. Like, what
Mhm.
I decided that I'm doing some leaving on Sunday, so I had better have a game plan. So
Mhm.
what I decided that I would do is, sort of reinvest in my bread and butter, right? Like all those little small stone animals. That's sort of,
Mhm.
what keeps the lights on for me. Those sell all day. So really making sure that I have enough of those to carry me for a long time. And then,
Mhm.
focusing more on the bigger, more unusual things, right? Like it used to be pretty easy to kind of sell a cafe set, just like a French cafe set.
Mhm.
I don't want to do that anymore. I really want to focus on the things that are much more unusual, harder to find, and like, in a smaller buying pool.
Mhm.
But I think that's what will be. And who knows? I could totally be wrong. But
Mhm.
I think that's a more interesting thing to do, is kind of
Mhm.
refining that niche even a little further to those more unusual items.
Yeah. As a small business owner, we cannot fix the market, but we can
No,
pivot, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Perfect.
just, making our decisions the best we can with the information at the time, right? That's all we can do.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, like, where can we see your inventory, and also like how we can reach out to you?
So my name is Margaret Schwartz. You can reach me, Margaret at modernantiquarian.com. I do have all my inventory on my own website, which I will be
Mhm.
redoing my website. That's a big project for next year, for this year. Um, and you can find me on Instagram. I'm pretty active on there. And I also sell on First Dibs, Cherish, and Collect. I have space at the gallery at 200 Lex in Manhattan at the New York Design Center. And then
Mhm.
I do that show, the Blue Hills show, twice a year. So down in Round Top. So, I mean, any way you want to reach me. And I always say, when I'm down at the show in Round Top, people are like, do you take check? Do you take, I'm like, I'll take money however you want to give it to me. So that's my philosophy with selling too. I want to be wherever you want to be. So
Right. And yeah. So thank you, Margaret. It was an amazing, episode, and I really liked. And do you have anything else that you want to mention, especially for our listeners, people in the furniture industry, you know, antique shop owners, or people are looking for a new career, in antique business. So do you have any recommendations?
I would say, the finding the mentor, right? We talked about that, how important
Mhm.
that is. And then I just more, kind of nuts and bolts, like nitty gritty. I use an app called Renati that I really love. And so that's an app that's actually built for antiques dealers. And I'll send that to you if you want me to follow up
Mhm.
with you on that. But it's an app, and you can do it on your desktop too or laptop too. But it's fantastic because I use it when I'm buying. So I go and I can take photos. You can remove the background of the photo, which is really nice, just like
Mhm.
right on there. And then you can upload all the information you need. So like where did you get it? What did you pay for it? The measurements, additional photos, the description of it, just whatever you need. That can all go in your Renati app. So it's all there in one place and like keeping things very organized, which I appreciate. I think that's huge. That's
Mhm.
huge.
Mhm. Great tip. All right. Yeah. Thank you, Margaret. Thank you
Thank
for
you so much for
attending.
having me. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.